Over the last couple of days, the rugby world has been mourning the passing of Super Sid, they used to call him, Sid Going, All Black number 655, who did wonders for the All Blacks, for the Māori All Blacks and for Northland rugby over the years as well. We're going to start off with some stories and some tributes from you all, starting with you, JK.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's, you know, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning with my dad or trying to stay up all night and watch the games, listening when the All Blacks were playing overseas. And I believe that, you know, I used to call him Super Sid myself. He changed the game. You know, we now compare a halfback who's like an extra loose forward or a halfback who's like Sid Going. And he brought this excitement to the game, you know. And his three brothers who played for Northland, I remember watching them, going, going, gone, you know, was one of those sayings when they did their triple scissors and stuff like that. And as you grow up as a young man and you meet an All Black, it's a pretty big moment. And to meet someone like him, and he's just a beautiful man, Goldie, like always had time to sit down. You'd sit down with him and he'd always have a yarn, had really strong opinions about the game. He'd always get into a discussion about the game, but just a gentle soul and sad day, so condolences to his family.
So me being a little bit younger than you, it was the stories I grew up with. The fact, Sir Brian Williams, the same stories about the impact people had on the game, and then watching Northland rugby and the Woodman brothers and and all of a sudden the way that they played the game, and you go, well, where did it start? Sid Going, and the stories of the way that he tried to I suppose, true the impossible. He always just had a flair for the game, and so I was lucky enough to have 2 or 3 conversations with him over, you know, time, and you just got the sense, like you say, very strong opinions about how he wanted the game to be played, and he saw it as a beautiful game. He wanted the ball to move and shift and an element of risk, but he was also pretty combative. And if you watch footage, Mills, you can sort of see, you know, that like there was something special about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. I'm probably a lot younger than you again, right?
Yeah.
So the stories that you'd hear, and obviously I played with sort of the 3rd generation sort of Goings, and every time you heard the Going sort of last name, you thought, oh man, you relate it all to Sid Going, right? Because you hear this mystique about the man and sort of how he played, the toughness as well, because in those days, you know, when you try to run around like he kind of did, if you got caught and were at the bottom of those rucks, you weren't getting a rucking. And you know, those are the sort of the stories you heard about this wonderful man. So really sad to hear him pass away, and condolences to his family too.
Lovely story from Justin Marshall. Sid Going helped Justin Marshall and mentored him when he was coming through the All Blacks environment. He said the word legend is used too often these days, but not with Super Sid. Moi mai rā e te rangatira, rest well and rest easy. Well, there's been some big news this week, no more so than the retirement of the All Blacks captain Sam Cane. This will be his final year in New Zealand rugby once he comes back from Japan. We're going to talk about that and the loose forward mix of the All Blacks. Plus, the Black Ferns have suffered their first ever loss to Canada in international rugby. So we'll talk about that and get some reaction a little bit later on in the program. But first of all, the quarterfinalists, well, the quarterfinalist hosts for Super Rugby have been confirmed with 2 weeks to play. There will be a final in Canberra, 1 in Auckland, 1 in Hamilton and 1 in Wellington. Just before we get into those 4 teams, are the Crusaders still making it, Mills? You said you believed last week.
I was going on a little bit of emotion last week, but I think...
Emotion? Why do you have emotion?
Well, I wanted them to get in, obviously, but then sort of that kind of a little bit went out the window when you know, the draw won, obviously, against the Reds, and they almost got home against the Brumbies. Hey, the thing is, they can still make it. They can still make it.
I want a yes or no.
I can't see them making it.
I can't see them making it either.
I thought they're your team. They're winning the title.
Oh, they weren't my team a few weeks ago, but what I did believe that they were still possible. Well, now mathematically, it looks really, really difficult. Yeah. Let's focus on, though, the teams that are going to control their own destinies now. The fact controlling where you are on the table and what it might look like and how important it is in this competition. OK, so who is in the box seat right now? If you look at those top 4 teams, the Blues, the Hurricanes, the Brumbies and the Chiefs. The Chiefs got off to a very fast start this season, but they've had a few speed wobbles in the last couple of weeks, haven't they? Yeah, they have. I can tell you who's in the hot seat, in the prime seat for me. It's the Brumbies. Well, they're playing the Rebels and Force to finish the competition. The Blues have got the Crusaders and Chiefs, Hurricanes, the Chiefs and Highlanders. The Chiefs have got the Chiefs have got the Blues and the Hurricanes, right? So you think about that. Yeah. It's the Brumbies who have actually got
an easier run home,
and could end up fighting their way into second place in the competition just based on...
Which means semi-finals.
Well, you start semi-final at home.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely critical if you win your quarter-final, and clearly an easier quarter-final as well. So, for me, I look at them and go, it's actually not a New Zealand team. It's actually an Australian team. And I think I remember right early in the season I said the Brumbies were the side to watch. Hard to win in Canberra, really difficult for anyone who has to go and play over there, and they've shown that already this year. I think they're the team in the box seat right now. Not to win the competition, but
to go deep.
To go deep and control where they are.
Well, derbies never help you going into the finals because there's a high attrition rate. It's pretty physical. Your Highlanders yesterday were pretty good for 55, 60 minutes, to be fair. It was pretty full on, right? Blues are very good, I thought. But it's still like derby mills where you pay. I mean, the Blues have got to go. No, the Crusaders are not going to make it. You didn't ask me, Kirst. No, they won't make it because they've got to get through the Blues. And the Blues have an incredible defensive record this year. They're playing incredibly well. So, no, the Crusaders don't make it because they've got to beat that. Highlanders need to beat the Drua to make it. So there's a lot going on. But you're right about the Brumbies. Very hard to go down there. And the way they finish, they could get to the playoffs just a little bit fresher.
Well, they need, I mean, the Brumbies need that home semi-final. They need that #1 spot if they're going to stand a chance. In my opinion, I think the team that's probably travelling the best, because they've been able to rotate a little bit more, is probably the Chiefs. You know, yes, they've hit a few roadblocks, but been able to win. But they've also started that sort of, you know, guys mixing the team up a little bit. You know, getting guys into play, rested some of their big time players to lead back into there. So I think if you're leading into a quarter final in these next couple of weeks, now's the time that you really start getting your big time players in there and start sort of just really hyping things up to get to the quarterfinals and then ramp it up again.
So you know how you said that derbies can be a curse because of the attrition rate. Could they be a positive as well? Because you say next week's like the quarterfinals, the week after's like the semi-finals. It's their practice run heading into the playoffs.
And I think that's probably where the Chiefs can sit. You know, they've rested some of their heavy guys. You know, the Jacobsons had a good sort of rest. Have sort of gone around. Some Penny Finau's been able to do that. Those are big time. Damien McKenzie is probably the only one. You know, he's been I suppose handled a lot of physicality. But I think when you roll into this next quarter, you're going up. Whereas I think the Blues, they're starting that a little bit. They're starting that. I mean, they didn't put out their best team.
I've got to go back to what Goldie said, because it's an attrition rate if you have to fly to your semi-final in the Brumbies. That's when it affects you. This is playing derbies, right? I think it's great because you've got this intensity. You go in with good intensity. It's quite high attrition rate from an injury point of view. But then if you play someone, you know, let's play a really difficult quarter, and then you've got to fly to the Brumbies. That's when it's tough. That's when they've got the edge.
See, the Blues are in a really difficult situation because they've got a lot of players to come back into their team, and it's what impact they're going to have and how long it takes them to hit the ground. We haven't seen Finlay Christie for a long time. Stephen Pettifetter's been on the sideline for a long time as well. So you start thinking about Rieko Ioane's missed a few games. Now, yes, they could be fresh, but ultimately you've got a team with all sorts of momentum right now who are playing outstanding rugby. And look, it wasn't good enough from the Highlanders last night to compete with a Blues team which was under strength. And that was pretty much the strongest Highlanders side we could put out there without Billy Harmon. That's the gap we're talking right now about the top 4 teams. This is why it's really difficult if you're outside the top 4, which is actually, we'll show you, it's impossible to win this competition. That's what we're dealing with, right? And so I look at this and I think the Blues are in a unique situation of you've got to find out. Talia had a rest week. Satutu, I think you're in good shape, but
I totally disagree.
What do you disagree with?
I totally disagree with this disruption. I think last night's game with the Blues will give that whole squad incredible confidence.
Oh, but I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that.
But look, if you talk about Christie, you could start him off the bench. Right, playing for the last 30 minutes if he hasn't played for a while. Patrick, you don't need to. In fact, I don't know why Patrick had a rest, because he had 4 weeks off with a cheekbone. Was that an All Black rest? Anyway, that's another discussion.
Yeah, maybe because you've got the Crusaders and Chiefs to finish.
Yeah,
and
so
then you're planning to have 3 more big games. Yeah. You know, to win a title. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great planning.
You could bring Christie off the bench if you're worried, because he's been out the most, right? Rico's 3 weeks. So yeah, I'm not worried about it at all.
Can I just touch on something you just said, Jeff? You just said it's impossible if you're in the bottom 4 of the 8 to win the championship. Take a look at this, because this backs up what Jeff is saying. This is over the entire history of the Super Rugby competition, bar those 2 years of COVID when we had Super Rugby Aotearoa, Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. Doesn't include those 2 titles. But the champion has come from the first place team after the regular round robin season 16 times. That is 62%. It has never come from 3rd. 8 has come from 2nd place and 2 from 4th place. So if you're looking at the stats, if you finished 1st or 2nd, which right now is the Blues or the Hurricanes, could be the Blues or Brumbies, could be any number of these teams, they're in the box seat to win the title. That's what the stats say, JK.
No, I don't believe the stats. I don't like the stats. Because
the numbers
history
don't
tells
lie.
us. The numbers don't lie, JK. They're not lying to us.
Okay, look at this. Look at this. Deduct, can you see this on the television? Deduct 9 from 16. That was the Crusaders.
Yeah, but they've still earned the right.
Get it out. It's gone. Because the Crusaders have had this legacy. They've had this juggernaut that you knew, but now they're not in the finals. So I don't think those stats matter.
You don't think it's that important to this competition when you start talking about
think they've been
a
too
sold-out
dominant.
Eden Park or a sold-out Hamilton or a sold-out Sky Stadium in Wellington, a sold-out
The Crusaders came up to a sold-out Eden Park and won. The Crusaders have been a juggernaut. They're not that this year. They've been a juggernaut that skews those percentages. So I think it's a little bit different this year because they are not, because they were used to winning. We know how they'd win. So 9 times out of 16, it was them.
2 times out of that 8 was them too in the last, well, maybe even 3 times when they were 2nd, right? So he does have a point, but I still think the ramp up leading into the quarterfinals is going to be because you're talking about the Blues, right? When do they start ramping up? Do they sort of start resting guys? Because you know that the local derbies are tough, right? So I almost think that the Chiefs will come back and go, well, last year we went like that, come the final, right? This year, how do we ramp it up even before the quarterfinals?
I'll just say that to support in some ways what you're saying, if you think about the Brumbies and they finish 2nd, right, and then they win their quarter and semi-final at home, and then there's that upset that you're talking about where the number 1 team gets knocked off. The Brumbies are at home for their final. That's why I think it's so critical and important for them in terms of what happens over these next 2 weeks and what happens amongst ourselves here in New Zealand in terms of those derbies. And because they are, the margins are going to be close. And depending on what happens next week, if someone's secure in their position, do they rest anybody in the last round in preparation for our quarter-final? There's some massive things, a lot of hypotheticals. I'm just going at the moment. I like what the Brumbies have in front of them in preparation for what
I don't disagree with this, but I remember the first 3 or 4 weeks of the competition, we were all of us in Hamilton and we said, who's going to stop them? They were playing incredibly well. Mills, question for you, do you think their inconsistency of 80-minute form...
Who's the Chiefs?
Yep, the Chiefs, is going to affect them. Because when you think about the Blues, we haven't seen as much razzle-dazzle, but they've been consistent in their defence, where I've seen a little bit of inconsistency in the Chiefs. So when do you want to start seeing that roll on into the final? Because that's what I'm talking about with the percentages. You knew the Crusaders, you knew what they were going to bring, they knew how to win, right? The Blues still don't know how to win those games. The Chiefs will still be hurting, right? The Highlanders will have won. One.
Yeah. No.
But do you think that inconsistency is an issue?
I think they've sort of come up with a plan to sort of counter that inconsistency because they've had a number of key guys that they've been able to sort of rotate in, but they've still kind of won. And I think what they're trying to do is they've worked out a stage in this competition where they need to really start ramping up. I don't think they're going to go to that last round and start resting guys. I think the Blues possibly might because they know they're in the form that might start resting guys because of the ramifications that the guys that they're playing need that spot. So why go and have guys beat themselves up when you've got a top 4 spot?
But don't you want to be top 1?
Well,
don't you want to be top spot, not just top 4?
You do, but not at the cost of guys getting out there and then getting beaten up, and then that whole week is sort of. I mean, you guys have been there, right? That local derby is massive.
I think more than ever, controlling and being at home is so critically important.
I don't think you rest anyone anymore.
Can't.
I don't think you just go all the way through now.
Well, you've been talking about consistency. I tell you what is consistent, and that is the Blues defence in 2024. It is steely to say the least. They have conceded an average of 14.5 points per game. And if you look at the other Super Rugby champions over the years, there is 5 teams that have conceded less than 17 points per game a season. So this is teams that have gone on to win the title. Out of those 5 teams, and this is teams over the years, if you look at there, 2008, 2006, 2001, 19 and 07, defence wins championships. The Blues' current stats, JK, are second on that list. No one's breaching them at the moment. Why?
Oh, I just think they're working incredibly well together as a unit. I think it's something they're concentrating on. You look at Akira Ioane's form, right? Like he is really, really going well in defence. Normally we'd see him out running a bit more and being a bit more free, but this season he's been actually defending really, made some really big hits last night. So there's no one resting in that defence line. And we all know that defence wins championships. It's just fact if you look at those things.
Oh, so you agree with these numbers, just not those other title numbers?
Yeah, so you talk about stats. So okay. These ones count because they demonstrate. Look, I think when I think defence, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Their front row and locks have gone about their work on the inside channel and they just don't concede. Now, yes, I know Dalton Papali'i is world class. Hoskins Sotutu has done in Super Rugby what he's done for a few years. He's dominated this level and we've seen some great work and better work from Akira Ioane. Adrian Choate comes off the bench, but McQuannell, Derry, Tui Palotu, Tuangafasi, Ta'aval, Vakina, Ricatelli. All of a sudden, that tight 5 is operating at a level. Scrum's been really good. Line-out drive defence has been great. All of the little things which are putting... And the Highlanders felt it. They got to the 50th minute mark and they just couldn't hang on. They couldn't stay with them. And that wasn't even the top side. This is an impressive defensive stanza, which I think this is when you talked about how many championships did we talk about the Crusaders? That's what they've won their titles on. They had Richie Mo'unga. Yes, they had Will Jordan and Sevu Reece and all these guys who can play, but ultimately when it came down to it, their ability to defend their last 5 metres when they desperately needed to was the difference, and that's why the Blues this year, I think, that's been their difference.
There's steel there. There's steel there. And I like the defensive efforts that they had because the one thing, you go 5+ phases, man, it is hard to get sort of past them. They almost force you back in. And when you say that 5 or that 8, they're just going to strangle you in there and almost slow the ball down to frustrate you. The one place I would say that they probably are vulnerable is less than 5 phases. So when you are analysing this, particularly often, when the Highlanders scored that first try, variation in terms of the holes around sort of that ruck. So anything under 5 phases, you could possibly breach. But even then, when you're breaking from far away, man, they're getting back and helping, and then they almost all of a sudden, in less than 5 seconds, have got their steel back and then forcing them back into almost to them predicting how things should be played.
Is defence not an attitude thing? Because Dalton's attitude in his interviews this year have been very different to what they were in the last couple. They just seem mature and different than, I guess, the attitude that they've had in the past.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I spoke about, I think, last week or possibly during the game is they've got like 10 or so players over 50 caps now for the Blues. You know, guys like Dalton have matured. He's been a leader. You know, Patrick's come back in and he's led. So taking those roles, and I think they've just realised that they've got to work really, really hard together, and they're nailing the scrum. So when you start getting some cracks, you actually start worrying about going to the next line out and not the defensive line. So, but they're doing all those other little things well, which means you can concentrate on doing your job.
And they were always vulnerable for a long time at line-out drive time, defending their own line. So all of a sudden you take that away from the opposition and you can get yourself set. They're only going to get better defensively as well when Finlay Christie comes back in, because that's one of his great strengths, and his ability to read his situation, whether it's covering back or hitting inside spots and organising their defence. I just think for me, that's why if I was looking on the field in terms of performance, the things that win championships, that's what they're showing right now. Every week it doesn't change with them. Yeah. And so they have to be based on form and the ability to shut down teams. They have to be one of the, if not the...
Just quickly though, it is something that you need to learn and lose to win. The reason I've spoken about those stats is that the Crusaders knew how to win, sometimes when they weren't necessarily the best at 80 minutes. That's all I'm saying. The Blues also need to take that calmness around defence into the finals.
Well, do not go anywhere. Plenty more coming up on the breakdown. I chat to Sam Cane next, and we start talking about what the All Black loose forward trio will look like, and the answers from these three. Well, I don't even think they've made up their minds just yet, so you'll have to wait another 5 minutes. We'll be back soon. No mai, hoki mai, welcome back into the breakdown. Well, there has been some massive news this week for former All Blacks captain, and I say former All Blacks captain because Sam Cane has decided to call time on his international career after this year. This could be his 12th and final year in the All Blacks environment. He will not be captain this year. He stepped away from leadership duties and he signed a new 3-year deal with Suntory Sun Goliath in Japan starting in 2025. I caught up with him a little bit earlier and I asked him, how did he come to this decision to call time on his career?
Look, it's been sort of brewing away in the background for a few months. I think I played the first 7 games for Suntory, and then they came to me with an offer. Originally, the plan had always been to come back to New Zealand, but when it was a 3-year contract versus the 1 extra year I had in New Zealand, something sort of had to seriously consider. Just I'm not getting any younger. My body's taken a little bit of a hammering over the years, and just I suppose as you know now, but like once you've had kids, like your priorities change pretty quickly, and you can't really understand that like until you get into it. And that's sort of where I'm at in life now. And just by having the security of a 3-year contract, will allow us to spend a little bit more time as a family, but also like hopefully post rugby be pretty well set up to be able to take a bit of a backward step from sort of work life and just be really present with them. So yeah, obviously there's like 3 or 4 different factors in there, but that's how we sort of come to make the decision that we did.
Okay, Sam, so tell us, what is motivating you? Why did you not just call time and finish up on the Rugby World Cup final last year? You're 5 test matches away from 100. Is that motivating you?
Oh, yeah, like I'd be lying if it wasn't. But also, like, that's sort of just how the contract was structured. You know, I'm actually technically contracted with New Zealand Rugby this year.
Yeah.
Look, and to be fair, like they've been outstanding throughout this whole process. New Zealand Rugby allowing me to get out of my final year, but you know, I had to see out this year's contract, which sits really well with me because yeah, I'm just pretty driven to still you know, have one last crack at the All Blacks, whatever capacity that may be. I know there's like this could be my 12th year, so I know like there's never any guarantees with the All Blacks, and you've got to earn your spot and prove it. So like that won't change, and probably even more so reinforces it now with some new selectors in place. But like I'm confident I've got lots to offer that team still. So yeah, hopefully can manage to get a few more in. I think like the first half of my career, a lot of those test matches sort of just kept racking up, and then the second half had to, for numerous reasons, mainly through injuries, they haven't come as quickly and easily. But look, it makes you appreciate them a little bit more, I suppose, when you've got to go through a bit of sometimes hardship to get the next one.
Sam, you've had a wretched run of injuries, especially over the last 4 or 5 years. We know you had that horrific neck injury. Of course, you've suffered back injuries or back niggles, and you've had your fair share of head knocks as well. So tell us, can you actually believe that you've made it this far? When I say this far, that you've had 12 years in this All Black environment and 3 Rugby World Cups? Yeah,
look, I suppose as I talked about earlier, maybe like the first 5 or 6 years, I didn't have any serious injuries until my neck. And then since then, I've had a shoulder reconstruction, this back flare up, which has been something that's been like sort of just managed over the years. So it's nice to have that, like give that time to settle. I know, like, although I've had my fair share of injuries, I'm not like a broken man that feels like I'm hanging on. Like I still, like, a lot of my body's actually in good shape, and and because I think like probably the key is like mentally, I'm still like driven and by the challenge of getting my body back, and still driven by like wanting to play rugby and perform well. So like I think as long as that fire's still there, it's going to have to take quite a lot from my body to for me to give in.
I know it's a bit tricky reflecting on your All Blacks career when in your mind it's not over. You've still got plenty more to give at this level. But we do want to celebrate you, Sam, because you've given so much to New Zealand rugby. So if you are to reflect over the years, I mean, is there a memory that stands out to you?
Yeah, look, it's like if I remember sitting down or getting sat down by Steve Hansen and Wayne Smith when they first took over as a 20-year-old, and they said like, "What do you want to achieve as an All Black?" And like I thought quite a bold goal at the time was to try and play 50 Test matches for the All Blacks. I thought far out if I could achieve that, that'd be something pretty special. Like not many All Blacks get to achieve that, and so to be on 95, having been to 3 World Cups, just had some awesome memories. But I think like I feel hugely lucky and blessed to be able to have done all those things. But like when I reflect straight away, it's probably just like all the awesome people and opportunities I've had to meet, awesome players who become great mates. Even like a lot of the staff in that All Blacks environment, all of them are just like such quality people, and it's a really uplifting and awesome workplace to be involved in when you're just surrounded by so many motivated and people who are like on the same mission, doing everything they can to help the team get better, and they're just like good people, you know, a lot of laughs and fun along the way. So yeah.
Tell us, one of the greatest matches of all time, the quarterfinals against Ireland at the Rugby World Cup last year. Does that one stand out?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's so much writing on that game, but so much history, like real backs against the wall stuff. And then to be able to play well, I think I got that quarterfinal jersey signed by the whole team, and gave it to my parents when we got back from the World Cup, which was pretty nice to be able to do. It's such a, obviously, like for me when I look back on the World Cup, it's such a like devastating, disappointing finish to it. But if I can put that to one side for a bit and look at a highlight, like one, it would have been probably that quarterfinal. So to have that jersey signed by that group and to gift it to my parents, you know, can help us focus on a positive time from that World Cup. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Sam. I feel very overdressed at the moment, but we'll see you back in New Zealand soon.
Yeah, deal.
Sam Cane joining us from Japan. He feels like he still has a lot to give. He's not an old man yet physically or mentally, and he's keen to have one last crack in the All Blacks. He doesn't want to finish how the Rugby World Cup final finished last year, and 5 more tests away from 100, JK. Can he do it, or are you going to be cruel and cut him from the All Blacks in 2024?
Well, I first think we need to talk about how amazing Sam Cane has been, regardless of whether he gets back in, and that's another discussion. And there's a lot riding on that. But he has been an amazing rugby player, Mills. You know, we throw the word resilience around a lot, you know, and he has been incredibly resilient. You know, he broke his neck.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wouldn't even think about playing again. He's been the All Black captain. He's had lots of criticism in that role, you know, and he's continued to get back up and continue to carry on. So the first we've got to go is that no matter what happens, he has been an amazing All Black captain, and he can retire proudly. I think it's the right decision. I think it's a good decision. And he, like you said, he's going to look after his family. He's got 3 years in Japan. Do you pick him? Possibly not.
No fairy tale.
There's no fairy tales in the All Blacks. I think he's still got a lot to offer, but I also think that Razor and his new crew are a new crew. So if you're going to start again, start again. And I think that if he comes back from injury, he's been carrying an injury, it's a little bit higher risk than possibly Ardy. So I think it'd be a really... I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't picked.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you mentioned about the resilience, but also the complexity of his contract. I mean, to sort of foresee that and have to make that decision 1 year left compared to 3 years, later on, as opposed to coming back and trying to get back into the All Blacks and then seeing what other offers sort of come to him. I tend to agree. I think it's really great that he's refreshed. The hardest part is he's basically coming back, and we've had a whole Super Rugby, and he's going to have to be picked amongst guys that have been in here, playing that level. You're right, there is no fairy tales, but there's also, when you hear him sort of speak, there's opportunity there still. There's still, a chance that he can actually make it, but, he's going to have to do a little bit harder. But the fact, I totally agree, he has done an exceptional job, and it's pretty tough when you think, he's taking it off Frito, but the person they're actually comparing it to is the GOAT in Richie McCaw. That's pretty hard, and so he's had all that, throughout his career. Yeah. So when you say resilience, that just comes top of mind to Sam Cane.
95 test matches.
Yeah.
95 test matches. You don't get that unless you deserve to play that number for the All Blacks. And his role's changed in the All Blacks over time. He was the captain in waiting, and then he's taken that opportunity. He had to go through some turbulent times. Think of the things he had to deal with the year before the Rugby World Cup. And then if you look at his Rugby World Cup and the impact he had in that tournament, and yes, we can look at the final, but the rest of the games in that tournament, he was outstanding. He returned from injury to that tournament and led the All Blacks to that famous victory against Ireland. But then his role changed, where he'd go as hard as he could for as long as he could, and then he'd come off and he'd allow someone else. He would do whatever it takes to help the All Blacks. So I think that's really valuable this year for Scott Robertson, if he feels he needs him. If he feels as though there's any doubt in his own mind about what he might want at open side flanker against England. And if he's fit, available and feeling great and looking like the old Sam Cane, the one that played last year, I'm more than happy with that Sam Cane to put on the All Black jersey this year. And so you start thinking about South Africa in South Africa, all right? He knows what it takes. He's done it. He's been there and done it before. So I think he's well and truly in the mix.
I get that, Goldie, but if
you're looking at the next World Cup already.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you do.
And
I'm not.
And I do, because I believe if you've got some young guys coming through, Peter Lakai, you've got to start playing them now. We have 3 years to the World Cup, and you've got to start playing them. So emotionally, I'm like you, Kirst. I'd love him to...
He's been a servant. ...to
be in the squad, and I'd love him to reach 100, because as an ex-All Black, I would love to see that happen. But do you pick him as your number one loose forward? Are you going to take two specialists? Does he cover six? He starts to get complicated, the discussion.
Let's talk about this, our loose forward mix then. But just one other thing that Sam mentioned to me, he's gutted that his final game with the Chiefs has already been played, but he is going back into the Chiefs. He's going to help them for as long as they go through the playoff run, so he's going to be an extra body at training to get back up to standard, if that helps. This is the potential All Black loose forwards. Of course, they took 6 or 5 to the Rugby World Cup last year in an extra lock, and Ethan Blackadder ended up coming over for Amoni Narawa. This is the season stats in Super Rugby for most of those guys, and the All Black stats for Ardie Savea and Sam Cane. Firstly, how many are you taking in this 32-man squad?
Can I just protest that list? Is that your list, Goldie?
It's not my list.
Okay, there's no Akira.
There's not enough blues players.
There's no Akira Ioane. Right, and right at this stage, I would take Ethan Blackadder out. No disrespect to Ethan, but Ethan has played 8 games of Super Rugby in 2 years. Akira's played most of the games this season, most of the games last season. You can't not put him in that loose forward mix to start with, whether he makes your top 5. And this is really interesting for me.
Wait, but I didn't put Billy Harmon in there. I mean, he's another guy who could be in that list. I mean, it's not...
Yeah, but would you put Billy in instead of Ethan just because he's playing?
The font would have got so small no one could have read it just if you start putting in all of these players. I respect what you're saying, though, in terms of...
Two different arguments, right?
Yeah.
Two different arguments.
So you're taking 5 loosies, JK?
Well, I don't know, because this year, I believe, and I've always said this, that after the World Cup, Mills, the big boss goes, you're only taking 32 players because it's $8,000 a player per week, so you're not going to take extra. World Cup, you can take 10, right? World Cup, you take 10. So do you take...
Who are you picking? Come on. Who are you picking? Who have you got right now in your All Black mix? Who's starting? If they're all available.
If I was starting tomorrow, I'd go Dalton at 7.
Of course you would.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, he's incumbent.
He's playing.
I would take a risk on Ardie, although he hasn't been playing in our competition, but I think he comes straight back in, although I think it's easier for backs to come back in.
Yeah.
Samipene Finau, I would put at 6. And that's my first 3 anyway.
And Hoskins off the bench, which is what you said last week.
Hoskins off the bench. And then...
And who's your extra, Lucy?
I just love Peter Lakai at the moment. I just think he's something that we need to get out there.
Right.
Peter Lakai.
Mills?
Is he in your mix, Mills?
I think Peter Lakai goes. I think I love the way and he can play all 3, you know, 6, 7 and 8. He's young, he's ambitious, he runs hard, he's very clever as well, and he works really well with his loosies. I think you have him in that mix. I've gone for 6 loosies with him in it.
Who else is it? Anyone different to JK?
Well, no. The only person I'd probably put in there is probably Luke Jacobson. I think he offers a bit more of that grunt at number 8. If you need him. I'm not picking a starting, but if I had to pick a starter, I'd be. I mean, I mentioned that last week before Sam actually said this, that I'd probably put Hoskins at 8 and move Artie to 7 and let Artie concentrate on that sort of fetching role. He's always had that as part of his game, but he's had to sort of evolve into this sort of ball runner. So I think you can have Hoskins do that. I think Hoskins' skill set is amazing, and then at 6, that's going to be pretty tough.
Who is it?
I think either Dalton or Samipene Finau. I think you move Dalton to 6.
Grenades.
Grenades. If I'm going to play England, I either want Dalton Papali'i at open side or I want Sam Cane. If he's fit and available and ready to go and been doing the work with the Chiefs and he plays some games, I want those 2 guys as an open side flanker. We need the big body. We need people who understand how to stop them with the advantage line. That's exactly what they do, and they are relentless. I've got Samipene, I've got Artie, and I've got Hoskins. Hoskins has been too good to ignore, and I have to see a future for Peter Lakai. I'm taking 6 as well. I'm finding a way. We are under pressure at lock, though. That's another discussion. We need to find our 4th locks from somewhere, given the fact of what we'd lost. And that means we don't have the... Scott Barrett's no longer a 6. Tupavai is no longer a 6 because we need them at lock. Patrick Tupulotu is a lock. So we need some versatility. We need to find someone for that 4th spot. But Peter Lakai, to me, it's one of those things you talk about and we're not prepared to maybe expand. If we have to develop some guys in the short term, we need to get them in the All Blacks. We need to get them at training. And if we have to... 32, 33, 34, that's an investment in the future about what we're doing. Because once you finish Super, right, what is there for those players after that? You're either in the All Blacks or you're going back to NPC, the odd Māori New Zealand or Māori All Black game.
You go overseas.
Exactly. You need to invest in some of these young guys, and I see it.
And that's where I think when push comes to shove, it might cost Sam.
It may do, and that's where it's hard on Luke Jacobson. I'm just saying that there's some...
I mean, it might be hard on Luke, so you take Sam for the championship and you might leave someone like Luke out because you want to get Peter Lakai in because he's not going to play unless the second 15 have got a couple of games.
Well, that's a luxury he's got, right? You pick a younger, even if you went the other way, pick Lakai in there if it was a younger Lucy, and if they don't quite cut it, well, Sam's still there for the latest sort of stuff, right? And you bring them sort of back in to steal things up if you're under pressure as a coach.
It's good conversations and good chats. We're going to have them every week as we lead up to the All Blacks first squad announcement in just over 5 weeks' time. Well, still plenty more to come on the breakdown. JK, in a moment, is about to channel his inner Olympian. He goes surfing with Billy Stearman. You do not want to miss this. And, of course, the Black Ferns against Canada. We review it all.
I love what I do so much. I really appreciate my job. I mean, I'm a professional surfer and not many people can say that, so I think that's helped me in my longevity. I've always been a hungry competitor as a young age, so like I've travelled the world internationally, beaten the best and learnt so much, I think, over the years. This is actually a chopu board made for Tahiti. Wow. Yeah.
But that's small.
Yes. Well, so this is a 5'10", and I normally ride a 5'7".
I put Billy's board on mine. Look at that. So when you're in a barrel, what are you actually looking for?
An exit.
Yeah. So we're going to go and have a surf at beautiful old Raglan. It's been 35 years, mate, so...
Oh, mate, we'll get you into a couple of sick ones.
Push me into a couple.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Go, boom.
I am going surfing with a local. I'm just so stoked.
On the ledge a little bit, got kind of hammered on that first one, but Bro, this is a bomb. It's gonna go down the sandbar. It's going to be different again in Tahiti. You know, I've never competed there before, and you know, it can be quite slow at times with waves and heats and conditions and things like that. So normally you go out with a heat strategy. You try and get a really good wave to start off with. It kind of puts you on the front foot of the heat. You know, you've got a 10-point system, and it's all about how you ride the barrel, I guess, over there. Yeah, normally you try and get one really good one at the start, and then well, for me personally, I'll try and get another quick one just to have that quick backup. Hopefully I get a high score and then a mid score, and then I can build houses, they say, and wait for, you have a bit more time to wait for a good wave and better your second score or even your best score. So it's quite tactical at times at the start of heats, and you can be like positioning deep or pushing each other and fighting for that first wave, because you always want to start with that first good wave, and it can be hard at times, especially out Tahiti, I think. I want to go over there and leave everything out there, because it is a big scary wave, and you know, a lot of people go over there and kind of get scared and not go waves and kind of have a bad competition. So I felt like I left everything at the Tokyo Games, and I was very proud of my achievements over there. But yeah, heading into Tahiti, I think it's anyone's game, and if I get the best wave, I reckon I could get a medal and bring home a medal for New Zealand.
Totally.
All the way down, Samba.
Thank you, brother. That was awesome.
Thank you. That was so much fun.
Good luck, man. Our spirits will be with you.
Oh, that was a brilliant story, JK. Billy rides a 5'7" board. What length did you ride in Raglan?
Yeah, no, that was what I call a fat man shortboard. But
how was your day down there?
Oh, it was unbelievable. But where the Olympics is just the scariest wave in the world. It's called Chopu in Tahiti. So the Olympics surfing's there, and it is an incredibly gnarly wave. It comes out of deep water, breaks on a really shallow reef. It's all about barrel riding, and it is really, really scary. And what you didn't see on camera, and I think they're going to chuck a longer version on YouTube later on, is that it's life or death wave, right? And if it gets too big, I don't know if they'll be able to hold the competition. So I'm saying to Billy, and if you surf like me, like, you know, I haven't had a tube for 40 years, but like pulling into something like that takes incredible courage. But it was just a really neat day. Amazing young man, really keen. You know, he's been one of our greatest surfers. He's 32 now, so he's just really amped to get into it. So it's going to be exciting time. Follow them. It'll be amazing.
Yeah. We wish him all the very best, Billy Stearman, heading across to the Olympics. The surfing will be in Tahiti, the Olympics, of course, in Paris, and all your coverage will be live here on Sky Sport, as is the Black Ferns. The Black Ferns have been competing in the Pac 4, and they're not done yet, but today, for the first time ever, Canada beat them on the international stage. Let's get some reaction from Daleka Menon. This is what it means.
Sorry, I'm just so excited for the team. We worked so hard for the last, well, it feels like forever, and having this outcome, it was just such a great week with the girls, and it was just about putting our best out there and just performing, and we tried to go out and have a lot of fun, so just to have this outcome is just amazing. I just want to say thank you for backing us, and our crowd back home and the people here, they show so much support and they care so much, and it's amazing to see the growth that our team has had, but that's because of the people back home that help us do this, so just a really big thank you.
The players care so much, the fans care so much, and the reason behind the tears, they are undefeated this year. They have won the Pacific 4 for the very first time, and Jeff, majority of these women are doing it for the love of it.
Yep, amateur. There's a number of professionals that play in the Northern Hemisphere. This is a remarkable performance, and you could tell they were well prepared. They understood exactly what the threats were going to be, and defensively they were so good. They took their opportunities on attack, but this is more about shutting the Black Ferns down, who last week were unstoppable against the USA, Mills. But tonight, their desperation, their dedication to the tackle, their work around the breakdown, but I think the Black Ferns will be bitterly disappointed, because they look as though they didn't prepare well enough. They didn't find areas to put Canada under pressure, and they'll have to be asking some hard questions about maybe their preparation, but this wasn't good.
No, I mean, when you think about it, they're non-professional as well. I mean, you just saw the raw emotion in terms of the hard work that they've put into it. To come down here, now they've propelled themselves to second in world rankings. That is huge. 18 times they've sort of tried to get to this moment. But I think you're right. I mean, the Black Ferns started well. You know, the game that they're trying to implement is that wide game that they had, you know, against the USA. But in conditions like that, I think the big concerning part was their line-out defence, you know, in terms of the drive. And that's where Canada were really impressive. You know, they put some pressure on there and then they sort of built momentum, got a lot of sort of, you know, off the back of that, and then they just hammered it home. And that's that emotion they sort of showed, JK.
Yeah, well, for me, I thought the Black Ferns were way too predictable. I didn't think they had a plan B to their game plan. At one stage, 36 rucks. So the Canadians defended for 36 rucks. You deserve to win if you can defend 36 rucks, but too predictable. Pod system, nothing running off it. And so the Canadians were amazing getting off the line and just bashing us. So I think there's a lot to work on for the Black Ferns, but how good for the Canadians. I mean, it shows that the women's game is in growth. The Canadian female team has always been a good team. They've been a little bit off just lately, but I just think it's good for the competition. The Black Ferns will go away and they need to take a good long look at why. Yeah. I don't think it was a mental thing. They looked like they were into it. I just think they got sucked into trying to run over a very good defensive side.
I think it's a balance of their game. There's no doubt, like when you see the Black Ferns and the way they play, it's expansive, the high skill level. In those conditions, though, pretty tough. You know, you've got to respect those conditions, perhaps find a little bit of field position and earn your right to sort of score points. And I think that's where they didn't get the balance right. They scored early out wide, and that perhaps was a little bit of fool's gold of thinking, OK, this is going to open up. But it didn't, you know. And when you look at what's to come, and particularly the style of play what's to come, you know, we've had that in Aupiki. You know, it's a real expansive game. We've had that leading into this against USA. They've got to knuckle down now and really get in that sort of tight sort of game, Jeff.
Well, they play Australia next week in their final match of the Pac-4, and then after that it's heading to Twickenham in September in those tricky conditions and against a set-piece oriented side in England. Yeah,
but to me, you get into a game where you have one pass carry constantly, where you don't do anything off the ground around the edges of the ruck and you're continually trying to spread the field, but one pass carry. If you're up against a willing team defensively, and we see it in Super Rugby all the time, that if you don't have any variation, right, it's easy to defend. Easy. And they were willing. They were fit and able and willing, and they were able to go to their strengths. Our discipline let us down. Yeah. We gave away a lot of penalties. We were ill-disciplined at the breakdown. We didn't adapt. So ultimately, this is a game where you'll learn a lot from it and we'll get better from. But we needed to be better and we needed to adapt.
But you also could have won it in the last 3 minutes and they kicked it away.
Yeah, exactly.
So that seems again, like you've been put under pressure.
Twice kicked.
You don't have, you know, and it'll be great for them. They'll just need to learn from it. The leaders should have been going, last 3 minutes, we can still win this, hang on to the ball, let's do another 36 shots. And they kicked it back to them. But look, new team, they need to get it right pretty quick. World Cup's coming up, not too far away, so take it on the chin. You've got a game next week. You need a very good performance next week. Yeah,
well, let's talk about next week of Super Rugby then. We're going to go right back to something you said at the start of the show, that the Brumbies potentially in the box seat because they could finish as high as second. Well, one game coming up this weekend could determine who they play in the semi-finals, Jeff. That is the Hurricanes and the Chiefs. That is a big, big game.
Massive for both of these sides. And so, you know, you think about the Hurricanes and, you know, both teams rested a number of key players last weekend, probably in preparation for this matchup. You know, I think if you're the Hurricanes, if you're getting this win, you will cement your place in that second spot. And how much does that dent the confidence of the Chiefs? You know, so I think there's so much to play for and some great matchups, because that's what we're getting now. Is when teams are at full strength, we're starting to see some of those positions we talked about a little bit earlier on, Mills, where guys are saying, you know what, and these are the games that All Black selectors watch.
And you're not purposely going out to say, hey, the selectors are out, but you know you've got to win. You've got to win against that guy on the opposite side of you in terms of the physicality, the battles within the battles. So, man, this is going to be a massive game for both these teams, JK.
There's a big one down in Christchurch too.
There is, JK.
Yes.
You know, like
there's
a big one down in Dunedin as well, JK.
I mean, I think it's more difficult for the Blues. The Highlanders, I think, if they can get back, losing to the Blues will help them make it, because I think they'll have no.
Well, they need to beat.
They're going to have a hard week. If I know Jamie and if I know, you know, the attitude down there, and they need to, it needs to be freezing cold for the Fijians, Mills, and they need to win that.
Just to confirm, the match you're talking about is the Blues against the Crusaders in Christchurch, JK.
I was talking about that, but then he brought up the Highlanders drew a game, which is probably going to be.
But they're all important for different reasons.
So if the Blues beat the Crusaders, and that's a massive game for any Blue, Blues don't win down there.
You remember what happened last year?
Yeah, totally. So they'll want to go down.
We don't want to talk about that, do we?
Make a statement, but also it's the final.
OK, it is the finals, or a couple of weeks until the finals. That is us all done and dusted. We'll see you next week on The Breakdown. Thank you for joining us.
Lolosio again with a crossfield kick, looking for mirror heads. Sets up options in close. Have the ball, and it is an intercept, and it's